Hey, welcome back, everybody. Co-Creation Nation. So happy you're here with us listening in. I'm Lauren Hall.
Hey, I'm Troy, Team Nation. Hello, everybody. Hello, Lauren. We are
Hey,
back at it
Troy.
once again.
Back again to talk about empowering ways that you can make change in your life. That's why we call this Co-Creation Nation, because you are creating your life whether or not you know it. Now, me and Troy are both hypnotists, and we regularly on this podcast bring on past clients of ours or other hypnotists or other professionals in the human services industry to demystify the techniques that we use or the success that clients have had so that you could use some of these strategies in your life. It's
Yeah,
exciting. Yeah.
very exciting. We're very honored to do it. I know we've talked about it before. This was just an idea that we had a few months back, and now we're on, what is this, episode 15, I believe.
Yeah.
So
It's,
we're super excited, and it's very humbling, in my opinion, Lauren. It's very humbling, and I'm so grateful to be doing this with you. And it's so humbling to bring on other practitioners and our past clients. And we even had a skeptic come on a few episodes back.
oh, yeah. Let's get more of those.
Yeah, and just discuss what hypnosis is, and how it can be so impactful into someone's life.
Well, it's changed our lives for sure. And when you're talking about the word humbling, I mean, we both work with people and it never is the same story, but it's always an amazing feeling to just to be a tool in somebody's journey. It's not us. Like you and I talk about that. There's not this dependency. There's not this magic skill set or secret, word or energy that people only can get from us. Like we've developed these techniques through our practice and through our hard study, but anybody can do this. It's a power that your mind naturally has.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And when you talk about different habits and things like this, I mean, I never wanted someone to use me as a crutch. I never wanted someone, a client, to depend upon me, right? I
Yeah.
mean, my job, my responsibility is to teach, to instruct, to empower, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the individual that needs to understand that when they walk back into their world after the session is over, that
Mm-hmm.
they are the ones that are going to be continuing to do this work, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
5, 10, 15 minutes every single day, because they need to show their brain their conviction in order to create this positive change for themselves,
Yeah.
right?
Well, they already were doing something with the brain. It's not like the brain was inactive up until they met us. We course correct what you should be doing with your brain. The new habit.
Yeah, and of course that's always going to be subjective to the individual, right? Because I say this all the time. If somebody wants to continue on and do what they're doing, whether it's feeling continuing to feel anxious, to
Mm-hmm.
continue to feel fear, stress, whatever it might be, that's their life, right? But when someone comes to me, and I'm assuming when someone comes to you, someone has made a decision internally
Mm-hmm.
that they realize that this path, that these feelings, that this bad habit is just not for them, and they're ready to change. So, in that instance, right, when these people come to us, they have to understand that when they walk back into their real world,
Yeah.
they're the ones that are showing their brain and teaching their brain something new. And what that something new is neural flexibility. It's allowing their brain to see a different path, to change the program, to learn a better pattern,
Right.
right? Because they're not depending on you, they're not depending on me, they're not depending on, their parents or a friend or their spouse. They're not depending on anybody but themselves, because
You're empowered.
if they want to come and change, right? They
Mm-hmm.
need to show their brain that they are the ones in control. They are the ones that are empowering themselves to make this positive change and to create this positive habit.
It's so exciting because we're talking about the subconscious, right? The autopilot, like inner complex paradigm that we really interact with and through all the time, but we might not have felt like we had a manual, which is why we've just like overextended the conscious, logical thinking brain, the one that puts all this pressure or responsibility for us to use our willpower or for us to view ourselves in a negative light. But when we, I use this analogy of a reset button a lot with clients, not with every single person. It's all about listening to a person and talking to their brain in the way that their brain already is talking within itself. But for a lot of people, a visual imagery is useful, and everybody's seen buttons or pressed buttons. So you press a reset button, and what do you expect? That things get rebooted and refreshed, and the bad patterns work their way out without us having to go in and, analyze or bargain or motivate. It's just fixed and done.
Mm-hmm.
But you've gotten to that bad pattern from whatever sort of external motivators, and if those are still around you and you haven't worked to reset those or changed some sort of habit, then we might expect over time you might come back to where you were at the starting point.
Right.
So that's why I see hypnosis as a regular habit and not like a one and done type thing. Like you can be one and done with a perspective, a trauma, a limiting belief, some sort of block, but you're already doing hypnosis before you've been to a hypnotist. I mean, what do you use? Do you use that analogy, Troy, like a reset button?
Well, people have to understand that they're already doing hypnosis, kind of like what you just said, right? From the moment they wake up in the morning and open their eyes to the moment they close their eyes at night to fall asleep, they're in some sort of hypnotic state. They may not realize it. They may not think that's what it is. They may not characterize that's what it is, but that's what it is. We're always in hypnotic states. And if someone has anxiety, if someone has a bad habit that they've been doing for months or years or decades, yes, I completely understand and I completely agree. They have to understand that that is a habit. They have already hypnotized themselves and taught their brain to do whatever it is every single day. And I always say it like this. I always say, has anyone ever told you that what you're experiencing? So let me just use anxiety for an example. Yeah. Has anyone ever told you that you having anxiety is a skill? And they'll say, no, no one's ever quite put it like that. And I say, look, the fact that you can create this anxiety for yourself and feel anxious, and you can do it every single day, you can change your emotional state within a quarter of a second, and you've been doing it for years on end. If you look at that on paper, that is a skill. Now, granted, it's a skill that you'd rather not have because it's impacting your life and it's making, life miserable and it's creating these challenges and these blocks, whatever it might be, right? Mm-hmm. But I always tell people, I say, look, if you were like an actress in Hollywood, you would be like a multi-millionaire because this is how they make their money. They change their emotional state at the drop of a hat, right? They cry on demand, they laugh on demand, and they sell it. They make it believable. You're selling yourself a story when you have this emotional state change, when you create this anxiety for yourself. So this is a process as much about dehypnotizing that and then installing a new habit and a new pattern and, and moving forward with that. Because people have to understand too, Lauren, that anything done or felt with any kind of repetition becomes habit in the brain.
It gets into the subconscious.
Yeah, and if that and anxiety is always going to be an unconscious or subconscious program. Mm-hmm. So people have to understand that they're already doing this. They already have the skill. They already have the tool. They just don't understand how to wield that tool. And that's when someone comes to you, and that's when someone comes to myself and our respective practices. And we teach our clients, we teach these individuals exactly how to go about doing this and dehypnotizing themselves from themselves.
Ooh. Dehypnotize yourself from yourself. That sounds like an Inception sort of thing.
A dream within a dream.
Yeah. Well, I kind of like this idea of the habit of hypnosis because people come regularly for my services for habits like smoking and weight loss. They've just done great marketing campaigns like in the 80s and 90s because that's what people think about hypnosis for. So I'll work with clients like that. And they're aware they have this habit. They're probably not your stress clients, probably hadn't thought about what they're doing as a habit. Some might think of it as, a condition or what have you. Words do carry a lot of emotional context. But my clients know they have this habit and they don't want it anymore. And what I find interesting is that when we try to resist a habit or shame us from having that habit, or in any way kind of associate that habit as being bad, in a sense that emotional repetition drives it deeper into the subconscious story of being a piece of who we are. So for me, for weight loss and smoking clients especially, it's so clear how the goal is to shift their conscious thoughts away from, let's not worry about being a non-smoker. Let's start being excited about being free and having health, or uh, what's ironic to me is how many people come to me for smoking for the expenses of it. Sometimes they don't even care at all about the health. they're just like, I don't want to spend any more money. This is a waste. So I can't use a motivator of health. So I just say, think about all the extra money you have and how exciting it is, because what they had been trying to do was to like shame and punish and deprive themselves of this stress coping mechanism or this social thing. I'm talking about smoking for that, but we're always going to have habits. So when we shame our habits, instead of just putting them out on the table and recognizing what would be a better habit, then I think it's going to be harder for us to change. So we're talking about having people understand hypnosis habits is already an everyday thing you're doing. So use these habits with intention. You are a hypnotist, whether or not you've had any study or certification, whether or not you believe in hypnotism, because I know we've talked about that. Some people think hypnosis is like a black art or some sort of like energetic trance, instead of the true science, of language that it is.
Yeah, and don't forget that cravings too, right? So whether it's weight loss or smoking, right? Cravings are also habituated, right? Someone
Yeah.
reaches for a cigarette, it's habituated. Now, if someone's a chain smoker, right, they don't see it as a habit, because now all of a sudden every single cigarette they reach for is going to be their favorite one, right? So it's like you ask, for a smoker, for example, you ask, well, give me your 3 favorite cigarettes that you smoke every day. And they can't do it because every cigarette is their most favorite. They can't pinpoint. So again, it comes down to a habituated pattern, right? They need to instinctively reach for that cigarette when times are good, when times are bad, before a meal, after a meal, before bed, right when they wake up in the morning. Every single cigarette is their most favorite cigarette. Same thing for cravings, right? For weight loss. If someone is craving, soda pop, or some sort of sugary drink or cake or sweets or whatever it might be, it's a habit, right? They've taught their brain that it's okay to have sweets. It's okay to eat all this sugar. It's okay to do all this, right? So again, it's a habituated pattern. And people have to realize that, the brain doesn't care. Your brain doesn't care if you have good habits or bad habits. Your brain just learns, right?
Yeah.
So you care if you have good habits or bad habits, because they affect the quality of your life. Smoking is going to affect the quality of your life, or it's going to wind up, in some way, whether it's health related or money expenses or yellow teeth or whatever it might be, right? Weight loss is going to affect the quality of your life, because it's going to impact your health. Anxiety is going to affect the quality of your life, because it's going to determine your emotional state and how you respond to it when you have an anxious moment, or when you become fearful of something, or if that anxiety just kind of turns on by itself. So you care what these habits are. Your brain doesn't. So that's the thing. The reframe comes, right? We like saying the word reframe, because you have to change the narrative in your brain. You have to change the narrative that's rattling around in your head. It's that internal voice. So you're dehypnotizing, that's the reframe. You're dehypnotizing yourself out of this old bad habit, and you're teaching your brain how you want to be and how you want to feel instead. And that's where the hypnosis part comes in. It's a tool. And the great thing about it, Lauren, is that when someone realizes that, and when someone really truly understands their own personal power, and they step into that empowerment, they can use these tools and they can use these techniques across the board to change any unwanted negative upswell of emotion, or any unwanted negative emotional state.
Oh, I love the way you said that. Exciting stuff. Hypnosis it's not what I thought it was, and I am so energized to come across how effective it is. I mean, it's a weird effective therapy. And I just say weird because we're working in the mind, and and we don't understand the mind. The mind doesn't understand itself. But what I love about it is there's no negative side effect, and it's so instant. I mean, you've seen this, Troy, I know, with clients. It's like after one session even, and then their habits are unconsciously changed. Like they're just doing things in a different way. It's almost like if you woke up one morning and started brushing your teeth with the opposite hand. Like it would be a really sort of subtle thing, but it's a completely different experience. And I mean, it doesn't matter which hand you brush your teeth with, although they have said, if you switch it up, then you can like strengthen different regions of your brain, with that specific exercise. But it's just that sort of subtle way that all the little habits of our life and our day really add up into who we are and what we do for regular everyday stress management, because we all have we all physically, with our chemistry and all that psychology, experience stress. So it's not a flaw that you have stress. The flaw would be unnecessarily combating the stress and not just letting it naturally metabolize with the processes that your body has created to do that. Mm-hmm. One thing I thought was really neat, and this helps to broaden the picture of hypnosis, is the difference between mine and yours semantics. The somatics. You're saying habits when you're talking about cravings, and I would say association.
Yeah, I view it as the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess it doesn't matter what we call the triggers that cause us to do or believe the things that we are doing or believing. But don't, anybody out there listening, this really is why we created this podcast, to help you co-create that best life. You don't have to be stuck with the things that you do or believe because of whatever habits or triggers that you have currently. You're hypnotizing yourself. There are professionals out there like Troy, like me. There's a lot of others. There's not too many others. Hypnotism is still a pretty underserved industry, but we're working to change that.
Well, that's why we created this podcast.
Yeah. That's why we work tirelessly. I mean, we're energized. Me and Troy, like, we only do this virtually, our podcast, but it's so exciting to talk about hypnosis because it works. You don't have to believe it or understand it. Just try it for yourself. Try, first decide, right? We've said step one, awareness. Decide what habits you want to change. There's a lot of good information, I think, out there about hypnotism.
Yeah, and getting back real quick to what you said about the one session, I mean, in my opinion, that's what people are expecting these days. That's they're looking for a solution, mm-hmm. right? And someone who's been a chain smoker for 10 years, or someone who has sugar cravings for 5 years, or someone who's had anxiety for 3 decades. I mean, they're looking around and they're just like, well, I've tried all these things and nothing has worked for me up until this point, right? So when somebody comes into your practice, working with you, Lauren, or someone comes into me, they're looking to go away from that first session armed with something. They're looking to walk away back into their life with something that they can do to knock down those cravings, to knock down that anxiety. Right?
Absolutely.
They're looking for a way on how to deal with this now, not in 2 months from now. They're looking for that solution now. So it comes down to a choice that they've made, whether they're conscious of it or not. And I would say this to my clients who come in. Of course, I serve the anxiety market, the stress market.
You are the anxiety specialist.
Yeah.
100%.
So well, yeah. I mean, exactly. But they come in, and I teach them these things, and I say, now it's your responsibility to walk back into your life knowing that you can now choose to feel anxious or not. It's not something that you just resume doing now. It's not something that is like lurking around the corner and is going to like pounce on you or something like that. This is now becoming a choice. And that is what ties back into an individual realizing their own personal power, because now it becomes a choice, not just something they resume doing. Same thing happens with cigarettes, since we mentioned that, right? It becomes a choice as to whether or not you're going to knock down the craving and teach your brain something different, or are you going to go back into the old path and reach and grab the cigarette? It becomes a choice. It's not something that you just do by default any longer. it is an active choice. And when somebody realizes that, and when someone experiences those changes, now they become empowered, because now they can change, and now they know they can change an unwanted emotional state. There's only two things that are going to cause something like that, right? It's either an external situational trigger or a change in emotional state. So once you understand how to gain control of yourself and your emotions, you can teach your brain anything you want to teach it. And now you have the experience because you've already done it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so rewarding for me.
And that's what's amazing to me, is that it can happen like under 90 minutes, because we're talking about habits. These have been things that maybe somebody's done for decades. And there's not a guarantee that it will absolutely happen at one session, but a shift will happen. And it's not a long-term thing you're going to have to do for months in order to get the maximum effect of what you want, if you're willing to participate. We're not the only ones as hypnotists hypnotizing you. You're hypnotizing you. Society is, maybe your parents or whatever, like paradigm of beliefs. You got a lot of hypnotists in your life. People like me and Troy are just absolutely on your side, and we understand the effectiveness of these science tools and how you can take them outside of the office in just a couple of minutes and apply them into like everyday things to trim out those cravings or triggers or patterns or what have you, whatever your need for using hypnosis is. I mean, a lot of athletes and super elite performers, business executives, things like this, are using the power of not just visualization, but like you said, Troy, interacting with their unconscious emotional wherewithal to up level that sort of provoked state. I mean, I think it's so exciting. Step one is awareness. And, in the 12-step series, that's exactly what step one is, right? Surrendering or stating that you have the awareness that you have this problem. And people might think, wow, with 12 steps, that's going to take X amount of time. Hypnosis is just a really ancient technique. I mean, it's been a therapy for almost 5,000 years, like documented in so many cultures. That's why, to me, it's so phenomenal. When I came across it, I couldn't believe, like after I started reading about the science of it, I couldn't believe it wasn't everywhere. And then I know more now about how it is so many places, but it's still, it's mystic, just as mystic as the mind. That's what we're doing, Troy, demystifying it.
That's right. That's why we started this podcast, like I said, and that's why we're getting our message out. That's why we stay consistent, getting, a podcast out, at least one podcast a week, because we want people to understand that this is a viable option, just like anything else. I mean, get the message out, allow the individual to choose. If it's right for them, great. If it's not, great. But we're here to help. And with the state of the world today, with everything that we just went through last year in 2020, and now we're in 2021, in my opinion, the world needs us right now, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that are looking for solutions and looking for answers, and they want to grow and they want to learn and they want to live their best life possible, because that is the life that they deserve. And that's why we're here, because we are service minded. We're service oriented.
And it's so accessible, and it's actually simple. It's really fun. If you guys want us to talk about hypnosis every single day, we will, because we want to bring this tool that is life-changing, not just for us, but for the people who work with us. We love talking about it. The Co-Creation Nation Facebook fan page. I mean, we've got videos, techniques. You can check out our website, hypnosisinaction.com. We've got 2 free audios, one from me, one from Troy. You can listen to both of us. Just get in touch with us and let us know what questions you have, or if you've had a hypnosis experience, good or bad. This is not a scripted podcast where we only put hypnosis into one biased light. Like, this is just the real, tangible truth about what hypnosis can do for you, because it's already done things like this for thousands of people. When you look into the history and the science, there are a lot of noteworthy, people, and I don't just mean athletes. I mean, like, a lot of big minds and musicians and etc. who use the power of their brain on purpose. So thanks for listening, Troy. Thanks for talking with me about hypnosis. I think we should do this again.
I think something tells me that we'll do this again next week.
Well, next week I know we'll have some really cool guests that come on. So we'll talk the 2 of us shortly, and you guys can check us out on Facebook.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Make sure you check us out, get your free audios, and we'll see you all very, very soon.
Bye, friends.